Conference realignment seems to never stop in college football, and right now, it looks as though Florida State leaving the ACC could be the next domino. What the Seminoles are doing to try and get out of the Atlantic Coast Conference, and what that could mean for the Big 12 in their possible conference expansion terms moving forward. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxwell here for the Back to 12 podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button and notification bell to stay in the know not only on Texas Tech football and men's basketball all year long, but also the latest happenings in the Big 12. I'll admit, this is a predominantly Texas Tech YouTube channel. As I mentioned, we cover Texas Tech football, recruiting, men's basketball, and everything in between. But also, I try and put out at least one video a week surrounding the latest Big 12 news. And now, I understand that this news around Florida State doesn't directly impact the Big 12, but I think it could in terms of possible conference expansion and potentially adding a school like maybe Pittsburgh, maybe Miami, maybe some others. We'll discuss that later on in the video, but I want to hear from you guys first in the sense of what ACC schools would you like the Big 12 to target or add if the ACC was to disband? Let me know down on the pinned comment below. I've already thrown a couple out there in terms of Pittsburgh, maybe Miami. Maybe you want to see them try and go after Florida State, Clemson. Let me know down on the pinned comment below what schools you think the Big 12 should target if the ACC was to disband. All right, let's jump into this interesting ESPN article, and it is from Andrea Alderson of ESPN saying Florida State has called a special board of trustee meeting for Friday, December 22nd, the morning of December 22nd. While no official reason has been given for the meeting, she says in her article, Pete Thamel quickly came out on Twitter, ESPN College Football Insider, and he said this is considering the meeting, and when it is timed, this is about the long-term future of Florida State in the ACC and their athletic future with the conference. Now, you look at some of the things in terms of the timeline of what's gone down for Florida State, and we'll go all the way back to February here in just a second. But Andrea says this, the meeting announced Thursday comes nearly 3 weeks after the Seminoles became the first undefeated Power 5 champion left out of the college football playoff, a decision that angered university officials, its board, and athletic department after a year spent voicing their unhappiness with the ACC for a host of reasons, including a widening revenue gap with other conferences, revenue distribution, and its place in the collegiate landscape. Now, remember, she just brought up what Florida State said earlier in the year in voicing their displeasure. If you go back and you look at what Florida State said in terms of their athletic director as well as the school president, this is what they said. In February, Florida State officials put the ACC on alert with athletic director Michael Alfred declaring something has to change for Florida State to remain a consistent national contender despite the ACC's money gap when compared to the SEC and Big Ten, and even really now the Big 12 in some degree. The Big 12 will be getting more money, just a little bit, than the ACC teams. In August, the school's president, Richard McCulkey, said the school will very is a very important word there, consider leaving the league unless there are radical changes to the league's revenue distribution model. Since the regular season ended, we all know what happened with Florida State, and now they're having this board of trustee meeting before Christmas. And let's be real about this, okay? We know as just normal thinking people here, board of trustees don't want to have meetings, let alone right before Christmas, okay? So this is obviously a big deal when it comes down to it. The fact is this, can they find a loophole or a way out of the grants of rights? And now also, let me say this. It is absolutely weird, in my opinion, that Florida State officials have to travel to the ACC headquarters to look at the grant of rights. Like, you can't just give a copy. I understand from the ACC standpoint, like, hey, we don't want you looking at this to find a loophole, but also just ridiculous, in my opinion. But this seems like now that Florida State, they had their mindset up and made up in February. Hey, we're going to leave. But now it's almost accelerated the process now here in December of 2023 after, again, the Florida State Seminoles were the only team ever left out of the college football playoff after going undefeated and being a conference champion. If you agree or disagree with that, it doesn't matter. You can see the side of things from Florida State's standpoint where it's like, well, we did everything we possibly could to make the college football playoff, and we got screwed. Now, you can say that's the committee's fault. Definitely can say that. But you could also say, hey, what are we supposed to do? We did everything we could here in the ACC. We need to go out, get more money, and be in a better league to have a chance year after year to make the college football playoff because, well, the committee just proved to us that they don't take the ACC seriously. We're the fourth conference in America right now. You think about it. SEC, clear number one. Big Ten, clear number two. And right now, the Big 12 is a clear number three if you look at the committee's eyes. So why, if you are Florida State, would you stay in the ACC, let alone other schools stay in the ACC? I think when it's all said and done, Florida State will leave the ACC. Now, how quickly will that happen? I don't know. They're going to have a legal battle from hell when it comes to the conference itself and Florida State getting out of that grant of rights, if it happens at all. But the thing is, for me, when you look at this, what's the domino effect or the potential domino effect? Because you know some of these schools are going to go to the SEC. Some of these schools are going to go to the Big Ten. But from a Big 12 perspective, what is the overall arching domino effect? I think this is why Brett Yormark, hey, he's just chilling right now. He's got 16. He expanded west. He dissolved the Pac-12, and really wasn't his fault. It was more poor leadership from the Pac-12's point of view. He just capitalized on that poor leadership, did Brett Yormark. Now he's got 16. He can see what the future is. And I think a lot of college football fans can as well, in the sense of 16 is not going to cut it. You're going to have to really expand and probably get closer to that, if you're at least the Big 12, closer to that 2022 mark. Do you get 6 teams from the ACC, or do you go the Gonzaga route? Maybe you can pry UConn away. Whatever it may be, you look at where the Big 12 is, and they are in a solid spot to potentially land 4 to 6 teams in the ACC if the conference was to dissolve. And I think it's possible. Just looking at the teams right now, there's been some rumors, right, about Miami in the Big 12. Do I think that happens? Probably not. I think Miami probably goes to the SEC more than likely. But I could see a team like Louisville added to the Big 12 for basketball, and obviously they've done well in football. I think Pitt would be a big one from the sheer standpoint of they have a rivalry with West Virginia. Why not get that and get a bigger market as well? Then you think of a school like maybe Virginia Tech and Virginia. Maybe you stick them together and you get 4. And then maybe somehow you can finagle a situation where you get NC State, Wake Forest to get into that North Carolina market if you're the Big 12. But I think the most likely outcome, if you ask me, is these 4 schools: Louisville, Pitt, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. I think that those are the most likely ones. And then maybe you add Syracuse as well to get into New York. Those are going to go to the SEC and the Big Ten, and maybe you're just getting the quote-unquote leftovers. But at the same time, there are some really big markets when you look at the ACC, right? You think about it, the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina aspect of it, Charlotte, you got Miami, Tallahassee, you got New York, you got Atlanta, you got Louisville, you got Boston, you got Pitt, you've got obviously Notre Dame, Clemson, right? And I get it. They are in some of those markets the 4th, 5th, maybe even 6th biggest team there if you include the pros. But it's also something that Brett Yormark has discussed ad nauseum, trying to get into bigger markets and just have more potential eyeballs on the Big 12 as a product, right? So I think that that's where we're at. I think if you ask me right now in terms of Florida State, do they leave the ACC sooner rather than later? I think so. I don't think money is going to be a factor here in terms of getting out of the ACC, because they're looking at this from a long-term point of view. And what the committee did just proves to them their way of thinking even more, in the sense of the ACC is not accredited. It is not valued. It is not viewed as one of the best conferences in America, regardless of if Jordan Travis is there or not. It shouldn't matter, right? That's their way of thinking, and I wholeheartedly understand it. So I think moving forward, you're going to see this process accelerate, and I mentioned it already. They have a board of trustee meeting set up 3 days before Christmas. You think those people want to be there? They don't even like working in the middle of March, let alone right before Christmas. That should tell you all you need to know about how serious Florida State is about leaving the ACC. And I just mentioned the potential domino effect for the SEC, Big 10, and Big 12. In the Big 12 aspect of it, they're sitting pretty right now in the sense of they're going to go out and pinpoint some schools that they want. and they have a real chance long term to potentially get to 20, maybe even 22 teams and stay in that Power 3 conference mold that looks like it's going to be the inevitable reality here in college athletics in the not too distant future.